SDPP, the Steve Dangle Podcast, with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Let's go!
Well, it looks like Steve picked a shitty time to tweet out he might be a member of the royal family.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible that Meghan and Harry would talk crap about my family like that. You know, we go way back, us Royals, us Saxe-Coburgs, or whatever Adam called us.
You're Saxe-Coburgs. The only reason they have the last name Windsor is because they didn't want to seem too German during World War I. So they switched it to Windsor, and that is why.
Did they just make up their own last name?
They did. Yeah. Their last name was Saxe-Coburg. Yeah. From Victoria onward, because Victoria's husband was I forget what he was, and then she came from a German line, and he was German, and so Saxe-Coburg was their name until World War I, until it seemed like it was too German. Like a fun fact about the city, thriving metropolis of Kitchener. Kitchener used to be called New Berlin until World War I, when they changed it to Kitchener, who was the head of the British war effort, and German businesses were smashed and set on fire, and a whole bunch of stuff. There was some crazy things that happened in World War I, and that's one of them.
Kitchener has the largest Oktoberfest outside of Germany in the entire world, and I've been to it, and it's absolutely pandemonium.
Huge German population in Kitchener. Huge.
Adam, if I'm looking at the Queen Victoria family tree correctly, she married a man named King Christian the Ninth of Denmark. And then they had kids and stuff. Anyway, that's my family.
I don't think that's I'm gonna have to look at that. She was very much married to Albert, but
well, then
I'm gonna go with Adam on this.
Am I misunderstanding how it is? This is a little early for Adam's history corner.
King Christian of Denmark. It was not
history corner.
There might be, maybe there's something to that, but I don't know. Sometimes the royal stuff is. You gotta remember there was like 40 people who like intermarried for about 250 years in Europe, and they formed the ruling class. So when World War I broke out, Queen Victoria's 3 grandsons were the heads of Russia, Germany, and England. So it's a bit of a small pool that they were all working on.
Bro.
Yeah, literally that. Whoa, dude, what are you doing, Step bro?
Are you a royal?
In doing research for my little pet project, I saw some family trees that made me go, ooh.
Oh, it's rough.
Yeah, no.
You got to remember, though, when you're looking at your family tree, most people up until about 50 years ago never ventured outside about 50 kilometers from where they grew up. Never in their life went more than 50 kilometers. So you have to think that happened a lot. And they actually, the Brits are going to hate this, but the rumors about British teeth are probably true in the sense that because they were on an island, there was very little cycling of population and therefore gene pool. And that's why you get British teeth.
Oh, bro, that is the Canucks.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy? Now, that's why I have big teeth. Because I had British teeth. They're terrible. They were awful teeth. I had brutal teeth.
All right. How far back does Adam have to go to find out his aunt was his sister?
2-3 generations, maybe. We're not exactly descended from the same people Steve is. Now, let's get into the fact that on International Women's Day, I thought this was fitting. The NWHL announced they'll be back. So happy for that.
Hey.
We're going to be back.
They're going to finish the season off, which is awesome to hear. Obviously, vaccine rollout is going a lot faster in the States than it is in Canada, although much faster in Canada now, which is nice. And obviously, we're happy to see them back, so good for them. Let's get into Who Wore the Crown, brought to you by who, Jesse?
Today, it is a rather long message, so if I can ask for some time here to read it.
No.
It's from Mike. So,
okay.
Steve's back. All right. Steve is now wearing a crown for anybody listening to the audio.
Who cares about them?
Mike writes, I have donated to Sick Kids. I'd really like to tell you about my story. Born in January 1990, my life started off as complicated as you could get. I was born with a congenital heart defect called pulmonary atresia. A heart condition such as this in a newborn in the 1990s was extremely uncommon and often meant that babies born with this condition did not make it very far. I was immediately transferred from Mississauga to Sick Kids, where they saved my life with multiple open heart surgeries over the span of 6 months, where I never went home once throughout those 6 months. I was baptized twice at the fear that I would not make it. There were multiple moments for my parents where they thought they would be saying their goodbyes. I owe the hospital of sick children for my entire life, to say the least. My family has contributed to their foundation for years and always will. I am now 31, healthy and living as normal of a life as one could. Sure, I have limitations, but nothing you would notice. I continue to visit my cardiologist yearly, and hopefully at some point I will require open heart surgery. And at some point I will require open heart surgery again. My donation at my request has been made out to cardiology department at Sick Kids. I would like to add that for anyone young or old who may be dealing with insecurities of scars, I was that child, the one with his shirt on in the pool. Don't ever let someone make you feel ashamed. All scars have a story. Can I crown a leaf? TJ Brody. That's from Mike. He wants to crown TJ Brody.
Oh, man.
Message.
You deserve it.
That over.
Deserves it after that. Holy smokes, that's amazing. What
Adam, if you could read Mike's liner, because he is sponsoring today's.
Man, geez. Okay, well, listen. If you want to be like Mike and be one of the bravest people that anyone's ever heard of, why not?
Why not?
Sponsor Who Wore the Crown. Brought to you by Mike, who donated to Sick Kids. Mike, thank you so much. Steven, who do you give the crown to?
Well, it's difficult. How many games have there been since we last spoke? Was it just the 2 Canucks games? I think it was.
Yes, 2 Canucks games.
What a shame. In that case, I'm going to have to give it to one James Vesey. Got to give it to Jimmy Vesey, who has drawn the ire, the scorn of Leafs Nation, and I think disproportionately and unfairly. The reason why Jimmy Vesey actually took criticism while other guys near the bottom of the lineup did not is because we actually expected something out of Jimmy Vesey. And I think there's a small reptilian part of a lot of Leaf brains that still is upset he wasn't a Leaf after that whole bidding war saga leaving Nashville. But look at him with the chemistry with Jason Spezza. I'm pretty sure all three of us could get a goal playing on a line with Jason Spezza. That guy makes magic. So I'm going to give it to Timothy Vesey.
There you go. I'm going to give mine to Freddie Anderson. And the reason I'm going to give mine to Freddie Anderson is it's nice to have Freddie back. Number one. Number two, I've been hard on Freddie Anderson. And number three, sometimes you forget how hard the Leafs are on Freddie Anderson. They certainly had no interest in throwing any sort of defense in front of him in either game. And I think, it's interesting. I still think Freddie, there's some flaws with Freddie, as there is with any goaltender, but the Leafs looked gassed and terrible, and he didn't. And that is, believe it or not, nice to hear and nice to see, because we have an issue in this market where we play him too much. And if he is looking fresh while the rest of the team's looking exhausted, and they've only got, 5 games in the next 13 days or something like that. It's a very, very light schedule coming up. That means everybody can sort of catch up to Freddie's level, and I'm excited about that. So mine goes to Freddie Anderson, who looks really good, who we need to look really, really good. Jesse?
If you hit up quanthockey.com, it's one of my favorite websites for hockey stats, because you can organize the stats in ways where you can get really specific. So I organized the stats in its NHL player stats in the last 2 seasons. And then I set the categories by goals, and I ran down the top 11 place in goals. And at number 1 is Austin Matthews. Over his last 93 games in the last 2 seasons, he has 65 goals, and he leads the entire league over the last 2 years. But coming in at 11th place is William Nylander, who has scored 41 goals in his last 94 games. Now, I just want to throw that out there because I just want to point out how good of a player William Nylander has been for the last 2 seasons. But that is not the reason I'm giving him this crown. I'm giving William Nylander this crown because he fell victim on Saturday night to one of the worst rules in hockey. To the over-the-glass penalty is absurd because there needs to be some level of subjectivity to this call. Like when he's going towards his own offensive zone. He's not trying to delay the game.
He's attacking.
Them calling it a delay of game penalty doesn't make sense. He's not trying to escape anything and purposely ice the puck over the glass. Like that doesn't make common sense here. So I feel like if there was some way to change this rule where there's some leeway for a ref to not make that call in an instance where the puck just didn't hit a glass, like the team has the puck, maybe the face-off just goes in your own defensive end, so then it's an advantage for the other team. But it doesn't make sense for a 2-minute minor penalty to be called on a play like that. So crown to William Nylander for that ridiculous rule that's still in the NHL rulebook for no reason. That said, when it goes to the Leafs' favor, I'll take it. Yeah. We're not talking about that.
Well, the Leafs have benefited from some serious or from silly puck over the glass calls. But like when a guy has the puck and he's like along the half wall or like in the corner, and then a player is applying pressure to them and they go, whoa, and they throw it over the glass, that should be called. That's like you did something wrong there. Like you're trying to escape a defensive jam.
Yeah.
Nylander was an attacking player.
Exactly.
With supports. And it just whoops a daisy. It's still his fault, but like it shouldn't be penalized for it.
If you look at the replay too, he wasn't even aiming in that direction. The puck just kind of went off the stick funny, and it bounced over the glass that way. And it's like, okay, how is that a penalty?
It should be an icing call. Like it should go it should face off in your zone.
Right.
So you say if you're in your defensive zone and you flip the puck out, penalty. If you're in the offensive zone, it's
or at least moving towards it.
Yeah, or like
I think that makes it too gray. I think you gotta make something black and white for the refs to work with here, because we do bitch about the refs having too much subjectivity. You know what I mean?
Nylander was in between the two blue lines, so like he wasn't in either zone.
This is the problem. Like he very clearly broke the rule, but like at some point you need to use your human brain and go, well, this isn't what we meant to do here. Like, this isn't what the rule is supposed to prevent. It is.
Well, it's funny because the NHL, they'll pick and they'll choose what calls they're going to take literally. Cross-checking, they don't take literally.
Yeah.
Puck over glass, they take
really good point.
And to prove a point, I'll talk about 2 penalties that should have been called on the Leafs. Austin Matthews has now twice this season cross-checked someone so hard that his stick broke. He did it. I can't remember if it was the first or the second Canucks game, and he did it. I think it was in the first game of the season against Ben Sherratt. Called neither time. That's ridiculous. But you can't do that. Kerfoot, the hit from behind on Miller. You can do that. Flip the puck over the glass. You can't do that. It's silly. It's very, very silly. Makes no sense.
Oh, that is Who Wore the Crown. Excuse me. Sorry, guys.
No, I liked you better that way.
Most people do. That is Who Wore the Crown, brought to you by Mike. Mike, thank you for being so awesome and incredible. Why not be like Mike? Kind of like the movie.
Why not? Why not?
You gotta leave room for the why not.
Yeah, you can't sneak that in on me.
You better sneak in. No, I think you just need to be better, Steve. I think that's what it is.
Oh, wow. So we just got to be black and white about this too.
Yeah.
All right.
No judgment here.
Wow. All right.
So why not? Be like Mike. Thank you for sponsoring Who Wore the Crown. Jesse's got, I think, you got people lined up for the next how long?
2 months? let me pull up the folder. I mentioned it last episode briefly, but yeah, if people keep sending in their donations. So right now we're booked through April 20th. We have Who Wore the Crown donations.
2024.
No.
Yeah, no. That's not this year. That's 2024, like Steve said.
We do want to say, though, if you're in the States, and for some reason, I don't know what it is, international listeners seem to be able to donate to sickkids.ca. American listeners for some reason, apparently cannot. So if you're in the United States and you can't donate to Sick Kids, a great alternative is St. Jude's, which is a children's hospital in the States that offers patients care free of charge. and it's for children only. St. Jude's or your local hospital, whichever you want to choose. How about that? Socialized medicine. Crazy.
And some people have chosen to give to like their favorite charity. A couple people have donated to Black Girl Hockey Club, and
love that.
All charity.
We'll take it.
We just like
whatever.
Charity. Whatever. Yeah. If you want to sponsor Who Are the Crown, donate to charity, send it along, and we'll get your name in here.
One asterisk on that: no Trump charity counts. Okay, just throwing that out there. Just wanted to.
I don't want your shitty
participate.
States.
No, they just
shitty university.
It does. No, it's just that the charity is really just a way for them to take more money from people.
He's got an actual charity.
They did. Yeah, they had golf tournaments and everything.
Oh, he's such a grifter.
Oh,
my God.
Well, what did you expect? Of course he was doing that. Now, the Leafs dropped 2 against the Canucks, and it's too bad. John Tavares, I think, said it perfectly. It turned what could have been a great road trip into a good one. And, I can understand Thursday was a night where you expected it.
Yes.
We expected Thursday night to be, the Canucks are going to come in and whoop their ass. They've played, this is now 4 games in 5 nights. There's no way that the Leafs had a chance. And they looked depressing and dull. Saturday night, though, less of an excuse. This team does look tired, but this is the Vancouver Canucks, and you need to come out harder. And yes, they did have without Pettersson, and and I believe he's sitting out again today. The thing with the Vancouver Canucks is you got to come out hard against them. They didn't. They somehow managed to get a 2-1 lead for a good chunk of the game and couldn't hang on to it. It's a shame. And it seems like another wasted opportunity. That's another Saturday game where you go, guys, this should be a layup. It's
the Matthews, Marner, Thornton line, I thought was the most concerning in that they looked sort of the way they did in the first 5 games. They were totally out of sync. I saw some people going, Matthews doesn't look ready after the first game, the Thursday game. I disagreed with that. I thought he had some really good scoring chances, but something was clearly off. And there was a quote that came out actually just before the podcast. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. That's got Leave Twitter talking. This from Josh Clohey. Austin Matthews said his wrist still needs to progress a bit, though he believes a reduction in games compared to last week could help. I'd like to see it heal a bit, he said. I'm going to throw out a hot take. I know the season is long, and I know they're using the Jets as a measuring stick. He should not play any of those games. Austin Matthews should not play the Winnipeg Jets. He should get that week off, then into 4-day break, and you can return against Calgary on March 20th. He should not be playing for the next 2 weeks.
I don't blame you. I don't know if I necessarily disagree. I love when Austin Matthews is playing, but this seems like something that you don't need lingering, right?
No.
You don't
ride a bike. Ride a bike. Do anything, but yeah, even if they lose all the games and the Jets catch them, who cares? Right. It's at this point, you've built enough of a lead where when he comes back, you're still going to be the Leafs. And they've played well without him. When he has sat out, they have played games against, Edmonton and won. And I think that maybe it's just sort of sit him. You know something amazing, Adam? The Jets could win all 3 games and not catch the Leafs. They're 7 points back. They do have 2 games in hand, but they're 7 points back. They could win all 3 games and not catch the Leafs. Sit him.
This is why you have Tavares, is it not?
Yeah, they're obviously
you're loaded up.
They're obviously not worried, so maybe we're just being overprotective here. But you're 100% right. Like, you can get at least 1 of 3 against Winnipeg without Tavares. You have not lost without him. You haven't lost a game without Matthews. Historically, you historically have like a division winning record without him in the lineup. You're like the Raptors without Kawhi. It makes no sense, but they're great. They're great without him.
Well, if they can win without him, maybe they should just trade him now.
Adam's on to
get him to the Coyotes
for Eric Stahl
before he signs there. That's right.
Eric Stahl.
Well, you know what? On that note, there might be an opportunity here. Well, we do know Elliot Friedman did say the Sabres are open for business. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if you were going to make a trade for a center, and you were going to make one anyway, maybe you do have to wait till the conditions are right. But it would kind of make sense now, wouldn't it?
It would, except, I don't think we're being biased by saying the rules of this season screw the Canadian teams. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, and let's use the Jets as an example. Why did Dubois count against the cap for the 2 weeks he was sitting in quarantine?
See, that doesn't make sense. You're absolutely right.
It's ridiculous. And the Leafs, who are up against the cap, are now going to be essentially penalized. It's going to be like they acquired the guy and then he got suspended. You know what I mean? So let's say they acquire. I was talking to someone today about the math, just the pure math of Taylor Hall for like the Taylor Hall half retained for like Kerfoot or something. And how far away are the Leafs from being able to afford that? Obviously Kerfoot plus. But even if the math worked out, it wouldn't erase the fact that Hall would then just be sitting there for 2 weeks before they could even use him. That makes no sense. The quarantine, I fully understand. The fact that he would count against the cap when you know why he's sitting there, that doesn't make any sense. So it makes sense for the Leafs to, logically, to acquire someone now with all this time off. But then there's the issue of, well, you want to be as close to the trade deadline as possible to maximize the cap space. But they can't. They can't wait to the trade deadline because you're talking about the trade deadline plus 2 weeks. It screws Canadian teams. It does.
I think there'd be a lot of people who'd say, well, Canadian teams are lucky they only have to play Canadian teams because there's that narrative going around too.
Those people can fuck off. Like, I'm so sick of hearing it. Like, I'm making it into a meme now. I hope the rest of the Canadian division joins in. That footage of Hoglander doing all that gymnastics on the kettlebells and riding a unicycle. And I was like, that'd be much more impressive if he wasn't doing that in the Canadian division. Imagine if he was in the East riding a unicycle and juggling. That would be impressive. Nope. All Canadian division, not impressive.
The East isn't very good. Like,
they're great.
Is anybody going to talk about how the Islanders are kind of the only team that looks really good, and like you can really swap the pens and the caps and Boston and Philly in any order you want because they're all kind of mediocre.
Man, if Carter Hart doesn't come back like Carter Hart was last year at some point this year.
The same people saying the Canadian division standings don't count are the same people who are like, Ovechkin is a better scorer than Gretzky, but because he played in this, against the Thrashers? Shut up. Wayne Gretzky never had to play the Thrashers. He had to play he got to just victimize the shitty Southeast for God knows how long. And listen, I don't even agree with that take that I just said, but you see how ridiculous it is?
Yes.
It is what it is. Ovechkin could only play the guys he did. Gretzky could only play in the 80s when he was in the 80s. The Leafs can only play the Canadian division when they're in the division. And also, when they win, it's the division sucks. And when they lose a pair to the Canucks, it's the Leafs stink.
Well, yeah, that's always going to be it. Sorry, Steve, are you asking for fairness in people's hate against the Leafs?
No, I'm asking for people to
ignore
We're
Darth Vader, man.
Ignore
the Leafs are Darth Vader. The Leafs are Darth Vader, and they're always, by the way, Darth Vader, the most interesting character in the Star Wars universe. They are always the most interesting story. They are also always the most hated, and that is okay. We need to accept that. I'm not looking for fairness, except for from the NHL. I would like the rules to be fair. And when we're talking about a quarter of the league, I agree with you. It's a little bit weird, and I don't think anybody who's a fan of any team in any division is like, yeah, no, that sounds like a great idea. That's fair. But if it came down to a vote, I'm sure all the teams in the American teams would be like, well, screw those guys. Am I right? Let's vote against it.
At least the teams have the same rule that are competing against each other. Like it's not like they're competing against the American teams within the regular season. So at least they have a competitive balance amongst the teams you're fighting for a playoff spot.
It's a competitive balance on paper, but like it's the waiver wire and the quarantine period crossing the border obviously screwed the Oilers to start the season. Mm-hmm. Like there's an argument to be made that they should be higher in the standings than they are because they just didn't have a goalie. They didn't have a goalie, and the Hurricanes screwed them for no reason as far as I can see. They remember that it was such a carousel of.
You'll have to explain that one again.
They put the Oilers had Anton Forsberg, I believe it was. They put him on waivers. The Hurricanes just went yoink and then proceeded to put another goalie on waivers. So Oilers fans are like, what? So you just took our guy? And then, but because the Oilers finished so high in the standings last year, every time a goalie got put on waivers, yoink. And the Oilers wanted every one of them. And like Aaron Dell, and the Devils go yoink.
Should have traded for Aaron Dell when they had the chance.
And the Devils claimed 2 guys and then put another one. And
but is that bad GMing from the Oilers?
Yes.
It's dumb.
They had the opportunity and wanted to trade for Aaron Dell and didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then they finally get Troy Grosnick. And then they can't use him for 2 weeks. And then I think by the time they had an opportunity to use him, they didn't use him anyway. They used Stuart Skinner instead of Grosnick in that ridiculous 8-5 game against the Sens where Matt Murray, we're just watching his career implode in front of us. He's got it back on track a little bit since then. But anyway, it's been a tough ride for some of the Canadian teams, to say the least. We'll just say that.
Okay, so without bemoaning the fact the Leafs blow 2, I didn't even know when the next game is. To be honest with you,
tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow? And it's against Winnipeg, and we know it's a big game. Matthew's probably playing, but we're hoping not. Mostly because we wanted to take the week off. Be nice. We'll see. The one thing, though, I found interesting this weekend when it came to the Canucks was Jim Benning spoke to the media, and that is always very interesting.
Boy,
and people
they've got to knock that off. Adam?
I couldn't figure out why. Like, why was he talking to the media? What was the reasoning? Is it a mid-season press conference? Or because it's not mid-season yet, is it? Maybe it is.
I think there was probably enough demand for it. I'm willing to bet. Dubas never speaks to the media, right? It's pretty rare. And if one Toronto Sun writer is like, hey, I want to talk to Kyle Dubas, they'll be like, well, no. But if everyone asks for it and it's for a good reason, like, for example, a trade, right? But a team in free fall, which before this 2-game set against the Leafs, the Canucks pretty much were. If you're a team in free fall and you're not really supposed to be, the GM should have to answer for that. So I give Benning kudos for speaking to the media, but good Lord, someone in that organization has to step in this guy's place. I'm not saying to fire him. He needs a speaker. He needs a designated, like in baseball, he needs a designated speaker.
Wrestling. Where you have where you bring around the guy who's the voice.
Paul Heyman.
Like, he needs a Paul Heyman.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. He needs Paul Heyman, and he can be dancing around.
Yeah. And then you let the big tough guy just grunt.
Yeah. He just does F5s in Suplex City and leaves. He needs a Paul Heyman so bad. The guy can't talk. He can't talk.
With that in mind, shall we show an example? Jesse, go ahead and play the audio.
Yeah, Adam, you want to play this little clip from his presser? All right. I'll pull it up here.
This would be why the Canucks are off to a bad start, according to Jim Benning.
You know, we started the season. We had the week training camp, no exhibition games, and then we started into the games. I think part of our problems early on were we played like 16 games in 25 nights. And in those 25 nights, we had 2 practices in 19 days. And so what happens with that when you don't practice, when you're just like saving all your energy to play the games, you have a bunch of new players. Travis doesn't get to, use that practice time to work on our systems. You lose execution when you're not practicing. You don't have puck touches. But I thought, the last couple of weeks, when we've had time to practice and our systems, we're playing, with more structure and discipline in our game. We've been in all the games the last couple of weeks. I think, maybe we have some puck luck. We have maybe 2 or 3 more wins in those 11 games.
Right,
but
we can pause it there. He's not exactly the most charismatic speaker, and that's not his job. So I'm not going to criticize him for that.
Horrible.
It's bad.
Oof.
It's like an oral presentation in grade 10. It's so bad. Now,
from the kid who won't look up.
Right. So
They tell you to look up every now and then.
what the problem is, what Canucks fans know, what we know, what everybody knows, is the Canucks got worse this offseason. And the Canucks were a barely marginal playoff team before this season.
Well, and the lack of practice, the short training, that's everybody.
Everybody. And who played the most games early on? The Leafs.
And the Canucks, they were in there. And the Oilers, though.
But
all the Canadian teams.
The Canucks have played the most amount of games out of everybody. They're at the halfway point of the season, 28 of 56. But that's not an excuse.
No, these are professional hockey players. They should be able to execute some systems without maybe optimal practice time, right?
You look at the teams who have played the most games. It's a total mixed bag. The Canucks are bad. The Sens are bad. The Leafs are good. The Blackhawks are good. The Oilers are okay. They're good. They're good. They're top half. Calgary's 20th. It's a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think anybody would come out and blame lack of practice. And I think what it is that we just need to call it what it is. The Canucks are poorly constructed, and they don't want to say they're poorly constructed. The GM who constructed them can't say that they're poorly constructed, but they are. And I know, and I listen, I know it was satisfying for the Canucks and their fan base to beat the Leafs twice, and I get that. Sure. But that doesn't change as it should be. That doesn't change the overall look, which is this team is not where it needs to be. He wanted this team to be an elite team by his 4th year as the general manager. It is now his 7th. 7 years. And people complained about Mike Gillis. Mike Gillis had a couple of President's trophies by now.
7 years they've been forcing him to speak.
Well, and I think it's 1 playoff berth in the last 7, isn't it? 2, maybe? It's not good.
Not good.
It's not good.
Not good. And last year, they would not have made the playoffs. They would. I know they had an amazing run. They would not have made it. They were the 11th seed in the West. They would not have made it. They might have.
Hot take from Steve. But probably not.
They might have.
But it was looking not like that was going to happen.
Yeah. I think I'm looking at their lineup because you're talking about how they're poorly constructed. And I'm like, well, they got parts that I really like. I don't think their offense is very bad. I like it. And I was going to say their right side on D is nothing. They have nothing. They have no one. I didn't realize Nate Schmidt was playing the right side. So here's what Daily Faceoff has. Alex Edler, who's the oldest player on the team by far, on the top pair with Nate Schmidt. Then it's Quinn Hughes, Travis Hamonic, and Jordy Ben, Tyler Myers. Now, Jordy Ben, Tyler Myers, those are two guys probably best suited for a third pair at this point in their careers. Hamonic is a guy who they didn't have until really recently, I believe.
Yeah, he was PTO, I think. Like he wasn't signed until right before.
Yeah, and for whatever reason he wasn't able to play. Whatever that reason happened to be. But having him in the lineup is a big addition for them. Regardless of what you think of him as a player, he's at least guy, right? Like they were throwing in guys who are not NHL players. So now I look at their roster and I go, yeah, those are all NHL players. Not all of them are great, but they're NHL players, right? So you know what? Maybe Jim is right. I guess is what I'm getting to. Maybe he's right. Let's all lay off Bim.
Do you want the Vancouver Canucks by season since they went to the Stanley Cup final and lost to the Bruins?
Give me that.
Sure.
So in 2011, like I just said, they lost to the Bruins in the Stanley Cup final. Since then, they lost in the first round, 11-12. Lost in the first round, 12-13. Didn't make the playoffs, 13-14. Lost in the first round, 14-15. No playoffs, 15 through 19, and then last season they went to the conference finals.
Shucks.
So if you don't count last year, they haven't won a playoff series since they went to the Stanley Cup final in 2011. But you got to count last year.
You got to count last year.
Yeah.
They won playoff series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last year for the first time since going to the Stanley Cup final.
Now, Canucks fans, you're gonna be like, well, what are the Leafs one? And you're right, man. Nothing.
I'm not talking about them. I hate when people do that.
It's not acceptable. Well, that's because it's called whataboutism. It's not a logical argument.
To anyone who's one of those, all you do is talk about the Leafs. All you do is talk about the Leafs. And then I talk about your team and you make it about the Leafs. Let me talk about your team.
No.
Okay, fine. Well, I'm going to do it anyway and get paid for it. So
How does Jim Benning affect Jimmy Vesey's play?
Well, I mean, Jimmy Vesey would bolster their offense. He would be second on the Buffalo Sabres in goals. No, sorry, third. Let's not be ridiculous. He'd be third.
God. Yeah. Don't overreact.
Holy smokes.
They have two guys with more than 4 goals.
Wow.
Yeah. They Vesey very briefly had more goals than Skinner, Eichel, and Hall combined.
Eichel's only got 1, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, and then Skinner scored, so now he only has as many. Not more.
Woo!
Yeah, it's Eichel and Hall, I think, have 2 each, and Skinner has 1 now.
Oh, by all means. Tell me about how the players love Ralph Kruger. Tell me.
How long does Jim Benning have left in Vancouver?
I think he's got the end of the season.
That's it. He's out?
Yeah.
He's done.
I don't think firing a GM mid-season rarely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Travis,
Here's the thing. Travis Green doesn't deserve it, but you're going to bring in a new head coach. Or you're going to bring in a new GM anyway.
He doesn't deserve to be fired.
No, he doesn't.
Oh, I thought you meant he doesn't deserve his job.
Oh, no, he definitely deserves his job. This isn't Screw Travis Green. Yo, Travis Green is a good coach.
Okay.
Good coach.
I think he is.
I think he's a very good coach. I just don't think this is a great team. And I actually think they're a better team than what they've shown. Skill-wise, for sure. Yes. They've had some injuries. Oh, they didn't get enough practice and didn't spend 48 days in training camp or whatever they have to spend each year. But in all honesty, Pettersson not playing, things like that, that's going to hurt you. That's a huge, huge thing. However, on the other side of that, you had your heart cut out this offseason. You, quote unquote, ran out of time to sign Tanev and Markstrom and Toffoli. I mean, those are major losses.
The worst one.
And you sort of made up for it by stealing Nate Schmidt from the Vegas Golden Knights, who are out Golden Knights, excuse me.
No, I like that name.
Like Vegas Golden Knights, they're losing their minds over there. They're crazy. Everybody who's on the free agent, Vegas is after. But beyond that, it's just not a great team. I mean, Steve, you mentioned Jordy Ben and Tyler Myers. Tyler Myers, the guy you just signed 18 months ago to a 6-year deal at $6 million per, is your third line right side defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
He's just signed him.
Jim Benning is, and like, you cannot say this lightly. There are 31 candidates for this. He is the worst active general manager on free agency day.
Put the phone down. That's what we kept saying. Put the phone down.
The worst active. And like, I defended the Canucks moves last year because the conversation was those contracts are too long. They're too much money, et cetera, et cetera. But what I did was I slowed it down and I go, now, wait a minute though. You're all looking several years down the line. Look at the Canucks this year. They're better. And they were better and they ended up making it with a bit of an asterisk, but they made it. And then they had some playoff success. I said, look at the team. I know they went out and got JT Miller despite not making the playoffs the year before and giving up a first, but they're better. They're better on paper. But now that we're in the future and it's time to talk about the future, the worst free agency general manager in the league. I don't want to talk about drafting, development, in terms of free agency, unrestricted free agents, getting them and losing them. The worst in the NHL. He's terrible.
He signs players that were good 3 years ago. It's like he hasn't watched games from around the league. If you watched a Jets game when Tyler Myers was still on the Jets, you'd know that he wasn't worth that kind of money. He'd maybe be worth half that, if that.
I think you can sign 1 or 2 guys to market value. Right? You can win the bidding war for 1 or 2 guys, but when you're routinely doing it every year, you're going to overpay. And he's overpaid so many guys.
To that point, Steve, what would he have lost. If you look at free agency for the Canucks in the last 3 years, what step did the Canucks lose by signing nobody?
This is the problem. So I'm trying to think of who they got. Myers was a big one.
Myers, you have Jay Beagle, you have Antoine Roussel, you have Braden Holtby.
Holtby made sense, I still think.
It made sense because they lost their goalie, because they couldn't afford their goalie.
Yes, this is very true.
And then how did they get, and I forget on this one, how did they get Brandon Sutter? Was that a trade and then they signed him?
Yes, I believe so.
So, because here's the thing, I'll grant you, Jim Benning and his staff have done a great job in drafting people. There's no question about that. They've done a pretty great job in signing players to, younger players to lesser deals. Look at what Brock Besser and Bo Horvat are making. That's not lesser deals, but, not the outrageous deals that Toronto's young players got early on in their careers based, would have made things a little bit easier for Toronto had everybody signed at Bo Horvat or Brock Besser rates, but it didn't happen that way. I'll give you that. But you look at this, Sutter, Roussel, Beagle, Myers. I don't know who did the Edler extension, and I guess that was a long time ago when Alex Edler was better. He was a very, very good defender.
That one's okay.
That's okay. You're going to have one or two of those if you're good enough for a long enough period.
Yeah.
But it's just scary, some of this stuff. And I look at, there are 3 current defensemen on the Canucks who make more money than any Leafs defenseman.
Yeah, that's not good enough.
Yeah.
If you want to make it about
never say, the Canucks have better defense than the Leafs. You wouldn't sit there and say that right now.
No one's sitting here going the Leafs defense is great.
No.
All it is better than last year's Leafs defense.
But so here's the thing. You got Edler, Myers, and Schmidt all making more. The only one that I would see in the Leafs top 4 is Schmidt.
Yeah. And Quinn Hughes is obviously on an entry level, but he's going to take them to the cleaners next year.
Well,
Holtby is, or not Holtby, sorry. Demko is a restricted free agent this summer. He's going to take him to the cleaners. Oh,
he's got to, you know what? Demko's got to play better to take them to the cleaners. I'm not really, he's played well, but cleaners, I don't know.
Oh, Pedersen as well.
Yeah. That will be hard.
That's going to be hard. Another guy who's an RFA this summer who I was going to tweet. I guess I just forgot that I really like him. Adam Gaudette. That guy's got wheels. Something about the salad. Yeah. I love the salad flowing. Well, he's just flying down the ice. I don't know what Canucks fans think of him, but in the limited viewing I've had of him, I like that player.
Well, and we saw actually, this past week that for whatever reason, the Canucks couldn't make the money work with Danton Heinen and the Anaheim Ducks for Jake Virtanen. They don't want Jake Virtanen. They haven't wanted Jake Virtanen for years, but they just can't pony up, $750,000 to make it work?
Well, and Adam, they just signed him
to get out of Jake Virtanen's deal. Sorry,
when are teams going to stop this? Stop signing players you don't want. Hey, I know how to get out from under that problem. Don't sign them. Don't give them millions of dollars. We don't want this guy, so we're going to... What?
Well, I think what they would say is we can't have an asset sitting idly by, taking up a roster spot. They're worth more to us if they're signed to a deal, because a GM doesn't want to trade for a restricted free agent because the restricted free agent then takes them to the cleaners.
That's what the Rangers thought. When they signed Tony DeAngelo, and then after 5 games of him being Tony DeAngelo, they're like, what? We didn't think Tony DeAngelo would be Tony DeAngelo. And now where's he playing? Nowhere.
Same with Virtanen. It's we don't like the way Virtanen plays, so we're going to sign him, and we're going to hope someone might.
Yeah, and then he lights the Leafs up because, of course, he does.
Of course, he has to. But this is the thing, right? I mean, this is just a different. It's just not good, and I don't think Jim Benning can say that. But Jim's gone. But I don't hate the way he's drafted, and I would take him on my squad any day if he's heading up scouting. I think that guy's really good at drafting. I think that's pretty solid track record.
The Aquilinis are Hoaglander's a hell of a player. Aquilinis are weird enough owners that I wonder if they'd be like, Jim, we would like to hire a new GM. Would you please continue to work for us?
Yeah.
Somehow.
Make the same money.
He's a consultant. He's an assistant GM. President. Why not president? And he gets to manage that relationship between ownership or whatever. He's obviously good at getting them to pony up. He's obviously good at going, hey there, Frank. Need some money there, Frank. Like he's obviously.
I wouldn't. If you don't want Jim Benning running your team and running the construction of your team, you definitely don't want him to be the boss of the next general manager, because he's going to say, well, what about this year's Jay Beagle? Why don't you sign him? Whippersnapper.
Well, I mean, the GM has to have, whoever they bring in has to have some sort of backbone, right? Like that should be a given with any executive, because that always seems to be the conversation. I loved when people were, I saw some Penguins fans anxious that Brian Burke was going to have too much of an influence now over the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I'm like, you think Brian Burke is going to boss around Ron Hextall? I've never seen two executives of the same team fight, but they might. They might. Yeah. So I wonder if that's something the Canucks look at, because you're right. He's not a terrible executive. He's a good one who does one thing all world bad. If that makes sense. It's like Nonis. Yeah. We were like, oh, he's bad at this. He's bad at that. He's bad at that. He's good at negotiating with RFAs. But he's bad at this, he's bad at that, he's bad at that.
That's true.
Everyone's got their thing. And Benning's thing appears to be most other things other than, free agency. Brutal.
So we got to move on here. So you guys all saw the Tom Wilson hit. And Tom Wilson on Brandon Carlo. What's that?
Drama.
Well, what was funny is, so he's got a seven game suspension now, $300,000 forfeited salary, and Alexander Ovechkin this morning called it a joke. It's a joke.
Well, Ovechkin, okay, there's been a flavor to Ovechkin all year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's salty. I like it.
I think he's still salty about the COVID suspension.
That I was going to bring that up. Why do you think that, Steve? Because I agree with you completely.
I don't know. Well, obviously, I've said this before. I've mostly been focused on the Canadian division, but I feel like it's allowed me to get a better view of a lot of the American teams, because I think sometimes when you're just peeking in every now and then, it's easier to notice themes because you have less time to pick up on things. And every time I watch, Alexander Ovechkin's in a bad mood. Win or lose, he's in a bad mood. And he's spearing guys in the nuts, and his quotes always seem to be ornery and pissed off. And he's looking at Tom Wilson getting suspended, and he's like, there's just another suspension to my damn team. Imagine if he had coughed on someone. How much would he, or not even coughed on someone? Imagine if he had met someone in a hotel. Then would it be 11 games or what? Because he got 4 games, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Or something like
Tom
that.
Wilson? 7.
No, Ovechkin.
Ovechkin. Yeah, because he had to sit on the protocol list, and I think, I don't remember. It was 1 or 2, and then they had to miss another couple.
Yeah, it wasn't really a suspension. It was kind of just you have to sit out for the COVID protocols and then the fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think he's still salty about that. And any decision that comes down from the league, he's not going to like it. He's not going to. It could have been a fine for Wilson, and he would have called it a joke. He's still salty. He's angry. I get that impression.
Well, so here's what Ovechkin said. And I think this is funny because the league is not going to like this. He's like, well, first of all, no one wants to hurt a player and make a dirty hit. But I think it's kind of a joke because we were talking to the refs after the first period, and the ref said, I don't think it was even 2 minutes. It was a hard hit. And on the ice, there was no call. So, the player got hurt. It sucks. But when I think you play hockey, you have to be ready for that. And you have to make sure you know who is on the ice. Now, Brandon Carlo says he's feeling better, which is good. But if you watch the replay, I could see how the ref missed that. I can see that.
Yeah, it's a dirty hit when you look at it on replay and in real time when you're on the camera. Ice. Yeah, when you're there in real time on the ice, it probably looks a little clean. You're just kind of checking a guy into the boards, he falls. But that's what replay is there for, and that's what they take into account during these suspensions.
I don't say this facetiously. NHL officials do not have a trustworthy opinion on the things that happen on the ice.
Okay.
They don't. We know this already. No, they don't. But we saw that. And that's okay. I don't want that fucking job. Are you kidding me? That's an impossible job. And I say they don't have a trustworthy opinion because it's so impossible. We saw with the Columbus, Carolina mishap John Tortorella and the goal not coming back, but the penalty coming off and that nonsense.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
William Nylander's delay of game penalty the other night, in order to determine whether or not Willie should have been given a delay of game, they delayed the game to talk about it. And I think look at the replay as well.
I think the majority of time they get the calls correct. I think saying they have a bad opinion on what happens on the ice is a little incorrect.
I didn't say bad. I said not trustworthy. Alexander Ovechkin hey, how'd you see that? He's going to tell you it wasn't a penalty because he didn't call one. If he thought it was a penalty, he would have called it. But he didn't get a chance to see it twice. He saw it in real time and went, no. And so he gave you his answer in the moment when he didn't call one. And then later on, Ovechkin's like, hey, what do you think? And he's still no. Still no. I don't think those guys spend their intermission looking at the game footage. Do you? I think they just talk to each other and catch their breath.
No.
Like, I don't
and they shouldn't. They shouldn't.
Yeah, their intermission is not ours.
Yeah.
Their intermission is not ours. So, a player... Basically... I would not give Alexander Ovechkin full marks on his citations for this particular essay. It's like citing Wikipedia, Alex. They don't know for sure. They don't know. Yes, they were there. They don't know.
Yeah. Ovechkin's pissed. I like pissed off Ovechkin, by the way, even though I disagree with him completely on this. And objectively, he's wrong. And Tom Wilson, by the way, deserved every minute of that 7-game suspension, probably more in my estimation. And I know there's people who are going to hate me for that again, but somehow he's not a repeat offender, by the way. Don't understand how that works.
That's so stupid.
But I do, back to the original piece, love pissed off Ovechkin, because when Ovechkin's pissed off, magic happens. And that's going to be fun to watch. I'm excited for that.
Let me ask you this.
No.
All right.
Go ahead.
I thought the Wilson hit was nasty and worthy of a suspension.
Mm-hmm.
What rule did he break?
Boarding
Boarding is what they called it.
Yeah.
So Frank Saravalli was getting some shit for tweeting like, okay, unpopular opinion. I'm not sure what rule he broke. Then later on, he tweeted, Tom Wilson. I don't know if he was saying this as partially a joke or if he actually meant it, but Tom Wilson has now become the first player to ever be suspended for boarding and hitting a player from the front. You know what I mean? Boarding is usually you hit a guy from behind.
Yeah.
Almost always. I've never seen a guy even get a boarding call.
Is 3 strides. It's 3 strides.
No, it's charging.
Charging, sorry.
Charging.
No, sorry.
Boarding is used. It's I forget the actual definition. I had it from Twitter earlier, but
boarding NHL.
It's using the boards as like an aggressive attack with the player as a body check. It's something along those lines. So that's what he did.
Because to me,
boarding is an ice hockey penalty called when an offending player pushes, trips, or checks an opposing player violently into the boards of the rink. The boarding call is quite often a major penalty due to the likelihood of injury, suspended. Like when I got a boarding call, I remember in minor hockey, and this doesn't matter, but I remember I hit a guy, and according to our house league rules, when you hit, it either had to be open ice or it had to be against the boards. But if it was too close to the boards, then it was boarding. But it wasn't close enough that they could, because you don't want to hurt kids.
Well, so
I hit him within about 2 feet of the boards, and his head hit the board. He was fine.
Yeah, 2 feet.
Believe me, I wasn't skating that fast. And but I got a boarding call for that.
Yeah, that's pretty much a cleaned up version of what I said. It's you're using the boards as like a violent weapon to body check some guy into the board. So I don't know what Frank Saravalli's talking about because it's literally a penalty, and the NHL outlined it when they suspended Wilson in the videos they released, where they explained the rule that the guy broke. So that's what take are you trying to say here?
The blind spot for Saravalli might have been that Wilson was facing the player who was hit, which
that had nothing to do with the rule. It doesn't. No, specify.
I know.
Okay,
but it is unusual.
Yes.
Right.
But don't say no guy's ever been suspended for boarding when it's literally a rule.
No one's ever been suspended for boarding in an incident where the two players were facing each other. It's almost always from behind, I think is what he was trying to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's oddly specific.
But to me, it is oddly specific. But what I wasn't getting is...
Also, if you know that, nerd... No, I'm sorry. No disrespect to Frank on that one, but come on. Who the hell knows? That's what he gets paid for.
That's such a tweet. You know, that's such a thing that oh, no one's ever done this from in front of a guy into the boards and never been suspended. Here go my mentions. Like,
Frank, by the way, who, if he were a member of this show, would be the second youngest member. Adam and I are both older than Frank Saravalli. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I'm 2 months older. Adam's 1 month.
Would you guys like to welcome Chris Johnston to the show?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chris is on. Hey, fellas, we're in the thick of winter and a storm's brewing. It looks like 1 to 3 inches are in the forecast when you trim that hibernation bush that's taking place in your pants. Seriously. Luckily, our partners at Manscaped specialize in products to make sure you're walking around town with those beautiful snowballs. Manscaped is here to provide the best tools for your grooming experience, offering precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. We're talking about the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer, which is the best hygiene tool for the modern man. Because of their ceramic blade and advanced skin-safe technology, your snags on the snowballs will be reduced. The trimmer is also waterproof, so you can trim in the shower. It's a lot easier, right? Manscaped Performance Package is the best buy of 2021. The package comes with a new and improved Lawnmower 3.0, Weed Whacker, ear and nose trimmer, performance boxer briefs, which I have and I'm wearing, and they're comfortable, and a travel bag to put it all in. You don't have to put your underwear in, though. That's okay. 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com. All you have to do is use the code DANGLE, DANGLE. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code DANGLE. Thanks, Manscaped, for making our winter wieners look so good. Bringing on Chris Johnston, who I almost forgot was going to be on the show, and I think it's only right that we boo. Boo, Chris Johnston. You're garbage.
Delete it.
Boo.
Delete
How
it.
dare you, sir?
Delete it. The power of Christ compels you. Sorry. Hi.
Do you think that boo is necessary? I've been 48 hours of being assaulted in my mentions. Like, assaulted.
And you still haven't deleted it. Boo.
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
Boo.
I need one more thing to happen before I delete it.
What?
What's that?
What?
Somebody out there has to buy the tweet on the blockchain.
I saw that. You're selling it as an NFT. It's genius.
Okay, I need you to explain this.
Well,
Okay,
hold on.
first of all,
Before we get into any of that, Chris, explain the Habs thing too. Context for anybody that's missed all of this.
it's been a month, guys. It's been a bit of a ride. So back, I think it was February 2nd. I didn't check the date stamp before we had this conversation, but I'm watching a Habs game. I was at home. They were off to a great start, and I tweeted maybe somewhat got a little ahead of myself and said something to the effect of, a short season requires us to make early predictions or early conclusions. The Habs are a juggernaut. And then they didn't win a game for a little while. And, unfortunately, Claude Julien pays the price. He loses his job. And so what happened, because there's, I love hockey Twitter. I really do. I love everyone out there giving me the heat. It's all fair. But literally every time the Habs played a game and lost after that tweet would just start rolling through my mentions again. And Leafs fans would be like, well, what do you think of the Leafs? And are they still a juggernaut and all this stuff? And I was getting that every Leafs game, every Habs game, no matter what was going on. So then they go through Edmonton. They win those 3 games 13-1. And I honestly, first of all, I don't believe in jinxes and all this crap to begin with. So I wasn't doing it to hex anybody, but I was like, you know what? I'm finally ready to say the Leafs are a juggernaut. And so summoning, all the people that had asked in light of the Habs tweet, I said, I'm finally ready to say the Leafs look like a juggernaut. And now they're 0-2 since I tweeted that, and the internet is not happy.
It's your
Way to go,
fault.
stupid.
Yeah.
Who is
Way
next?
to go.
Who can we get? Can you tweet something about the Jets? Because the Leafs play them tomorrow. It'd be really great if you could tell the world that they're juggernauts.
CJ, the Blackhawks have been a feel-good story. Why don't you screw with them?
I actually might retire the J word at this point because now people will actually think I'm trying to put a hex on someone, which is not my intent. Like when I tweeted about the Habs, I honestly thought like, man, this team looks like a juggernaut. They're not just winning, but never tweet. It's just the easy answer. Never express an opinion.
No.
Never tweet. Everything's done that way.
You're like the
Good
biggest
advice.
disruption to sports betting. You're like Wall Street bets, but to sports betting. What do you think of the Brooklyn Nets there, CJ?
Go all in on GameStop, bud. There's nothing bad can happen.
Hold that line, CJ. Hold that line.
Oh my God. And now they're going to plummet because you said all in. Way to go.
Yeah,
Way to go,
right.
CJ. GameStop looks like a juggernaut.
It hasn't helped though. Like people like yourself immediately jumped on me and were like that I've thrown the hex on them.
Shouldn't have done it.
Well, then why? Okay, so for a month, Leafs fans were coming at me. The original tweet was about the Habs, and everyone's like, well, what do you think of the Leafs? What do you think of the Leafs? Why are you calling the Leafs a juggernaut? Then I finally concede to them, and now the same people are mad at me.
Oh my God, you're the monkey's paw.
It's the internet. You can't win. Like nobody wins a discussion on the internet.
Yeah,
I'm trying to, though. I have tried really hard to win this discussion. Not to win, but just to be fair.
Well, the next person that is a dick to you, look at what team they cheer for and just tweet that their team's a juggernaut and say, there you go, sir. And I can't wait for the third time's a charm, Chris Johnston juggernaut tweet to happen. Now, Chris, you were watching the games, obviously, the past two, the Leafs versus the Canucks. Not particularly inspiring. Does it worry you at all? Not because of your juggernaut tweet, but just in general. Like, is it something where it's like Leaf fans should kind of be concerned, or is it they're exhausted?
Yeah, I was watching that whole game going like, man, I've really screwed this team up. You know, I should not. No. In all seriousness, I wouldn't be that worried as a Leafs fan or, you know, the team. You know, no one likes to hear this because it is an excuse, but what they just played 5 games in 8 days across Western Canada. You know, they had leads in both games. You know, it wasn't like they've got look, it wasn't great, but it wasn't, they didn't lose 7-1 or whatever, you know, Winnipeg lost in the weekend in Montreal. So, you know, I think that there's like some cause for, okay, can they stop this now? Because one thing the Leafs have been much better at this year is not letting the sort of down periods ride for too long. There really haven't been very many. You know, I think that's a worthy question as we move into a tough series of games with Winnipeg. But, you know, there was nothing in those games that made me think, oh, they've lost it. I just think they're probably tired. It's been a lot of games. The goalies are hurt, right? Jack Campbell gets a shutout, then he can't even dress for the next couple. You know, Freddie, I'm not pinning this on any individuals. It just, they weren't themselves fully, but I don't see any cause to hit panic buttons or anything like that.
Well, speaking of not themselves, there was a quote today from Austin Matthews basically talking about like he wishes his wrist was further along in terms of progress or whatever. And a lot of Leaf Twitter was saying, why is this guy playing? Why is this guy playing?
Because he wants to be, you know, and like,
huh? It should be, shouldn't they be like, yeah, but you can't.
But I don't think he's at a point where he's risking further damage. I mean,
okay.
Look, one thing that Austin sort of made clear is that he's out of the rhythm now, even just from missing the few games he did. That, you know, obviously when he was popping, like it was just rolling for him. They're playing every day, every other day. It was going well. And then, you know, I think that he's searching for it a little bit. You know, clearly the strength isn't fully back though. You know, Sheldon Keith, the most interesting thing I heard at practice today was Sheldon Keith mentioning in the power play, they've had to move him a little bit out of a shooter spot just because he's not comfortable being the main shooter on the power play, essentially. So, I mean, that's also hinting at the same thing you're talking about. But I think he really doesn't want to get out of a rhythm. I think he wants to keep playing. And you know, look, lots of guys are playing hurt. We just don't always know about it. You know, we know William Nylander is playing hurt. You know, I think that's a facet of hockey. It's hard to keep players out of the lineup in hockey. You know, in the NBA where like load management is just fully real. I wish I remember the teams. There was one recently, you know, the star player was on a limit for minutes and it was like a close game with 2 minutes left. They're like, you're off. Like you're at 34 minutes or whatever. You know, we're not there in hockey. Like Joe Thornton came back from his rib injury and played 3 games in 4 days and then got hurt again. And I'm not saying it's because he played those 3 games in 4 days, but you kind of think, you wonder, right? If, like, could we ease these guys in more? Could we give them more time off when they're injured? It's so against the culture of the sport. I think it's the easiest answer. And you know, obviously Austin's pushing to play. The doctors have determined he can't make this worse. And so that's why we're where we are right now.
And then obviously we see today at practice, Wayne Simmons is back skating again. Any idea on when his return is? Because he definitely seems, for all the projections about where his skill level was at, boy, did he come out and play great and become a fan favorite in about a heartbeat. And the team, despite the fact that they've kept winning, certainly seems to miss him.
For sure. It's not going to be hard to find a spot for him. I think he's probably still about 2 weeks away, though. He was been able to skate last week. We didn't see him because the team was on the road, so we weren't here at the practice rink. But he was skating last week initially, and he's back today. And probably if you're going to find a silver lining in a broken wrist, which is what he's coming back for, it's that he can keep his conditioning up. And so theoretically, once he's able to regain his own strength in the wrist and be able to feel like he can handle the puck and shoot and all those things, potentially throw a punch too, which is, part of what he does from time to time. Then he'll be able to get back in the lineup, but at least he's going to be able to have the conditioning part down. So, he's not imminent, but that 2 weeks will go quickly. And actually, once we get beyond this week, the Leafs have a couple pretty quiet weeks in this shortened season in terms of number of games. So he is getting closer, maybe 6 or 8 more games before he's back.
So you've broken some things on the show in the past, and I just want to know, what did it take for the Leafs to get Taylor Hall in the trade you're about to announce? On our show right now.
Well, look, that makes a lot of sense. The only part that doesn't make sense or doesn't make this easy is the cap situation. I think that let's look at Buffalo in general. We know that the shop is open. I mean, come into the convenience store and look around and what do you want? Any team that might want Taylor Hall is going to have trouble, because I assume it's really only contenders that would be in the market for him. Who's going to be able to fit even a $4 million cap hit under their ceiling, which is Buffalo retaining half that salary. I mean, if we just go through the contenders, Tampa, Vegas, who else you got on there? Colorado, like they're all teams that are using LTIR. Boston might have a bit of room for them if they wanted to do it. Carolina has a bit of room, but most of the top teams in the league are in the same situation as the Leafs. And so you work through what makes sense for the Leafs. Like, can you trade $4 million off as part of that deal? Are you going to give away someone like Alex Kerfoot just to name a $4 million, well, a little less, but similar, that kind of contract, starts to maybe make the numbers make sense. The other thing that could happen here, which happened in Chicago, I believe, maybe the year they got Antoine Vermette at the deadline, is Patrick Kane went on long-term injured reserve for the rest of the regular season and then was activated for the playoffs. If the Leafs had an injury, which obviously no one's cheering for, but, they could potentially go above the cap to bring in someone like Taylor Hall and then activate that player come playoff time. So there's ways it could happen, but as we're sitting here right now, March 8th, I believe it is, there's more reasons to say it's not going to happen than to say that it will. But, I think Taylor would want to come here. It makes a lot of sense. Look, the Leafs could definitely use another top 6 left winger. They could definitely use an impact player. They could definitely use a guy who's got a house in Toronto. Taylor, I'm imagining, I haven't talked to him. I actually haven't asked his agent, so this is just my opinion, but I don't think it's a bold one to say. Probably wouldn't mind a chance to compete for the Stanley Cup and whatever's happening with the Sabres. So, there's a fit there from 10,000 feet. I just don't know if all the details are going to line up the way they need to make that trade work.
Chris, with the trade deadline looming, there's been a lot of rumors about the fact that there aren't going to be a lot of buyers this year. Like most of the teams, I think it was Pierre LeBrun who said, majority of the teams that are in contention for the playoffs right now that are almost certain to make it are teams that do not have the green light to spend anyway, even if they did have the cap room. Like you maybe look at a Carolina. I know Tom Dundon's the kind of guy who's like, you know what, screw it, let it ride. But even Tom Dundon can't run away from the fact that COVID has had a pretty nasty effect on the economy, and a lot of these teams are hurting, and there's no fans. I mean, what do you think the situation in terms of buyer's market versus seller's market? Are we going to have too many teams selling, not enough buying come trade deadline, or is it going to be the other way around, which it normally is?
I just don't think there's going to be enough buying in general for the reasons you mentioned. But keep in mind, like sometimes what is there, like 40 trades on that day? And I get some of them are like your 6th defenseman for a 6th round pick. Like they're not trades that grab a big headline on sportsnet.ca. But, I think you're going to see less of those even because sometimes teams make that trade not thinking they can win the cup, but they want to get the playoff dates, right? Because that's more revenue for their owner. Well, I know we're starting to get fans in small percentages in the US, but making the playoffs right now, it might cost the team more than revenue they can draw from selling tickets in their building, which isn't to say teams want to miss the playoffs on purpose, but I think there's less incentive to even roll the dice just to try to get playoff games if you're on the bubble there. And so, the contenders, as I already outlined, basically all the teams, like whatever the list we could say of the top 5 teams to win the cup, and we might not have complete agreement on this call among who's those 5 are, but those teams don't have any cap room anyway. They might not have the money to spend, and I don't think the sort of middle tier that's trying to make the playoffs or trying to get some catch magic in a bottle, I don't see much there. So, I'd be stunned if this was an active trade deadline. I think there's going to be moves, don't get me wrong. And I think we're going to see moves in March. April 12th is the official deadline, but any of these Canadian teams looking to make a trade, I think they really want to make that deal as soon as possible. I mean, this week or next week, why not? You want to get the 14-day quarantine served as soon as you can, get the player in your lineup. So there's going to be trades. I just don't think it's going to be anywhere near the volume that we're accustomed to.
Chris, right before you joined us, you fired off a tweet about the NHL draft lottery and some potential changes that could be happening to it. Can you explain to us what's going on there?
Yeah, I literally sent that and then joined with you guys. So if anyone's mad at me or anything, I haven't seen the text yet. But as it was relayed to me, teams were told about the NHL looking to propose changes to the draft lottery. It's going to go down to, this is if it's approved. This is subject to approval. Instead of having the top 3 picks determined by lottery, it's only going to be the top 2. You're only going to be able to move up 10 spots with a lottery win, which means a team that say is 15th overall or 15th from the bottom in the standings can't win the number 1 pick. They could only move up to number 5. And you could only win 2 lotteries in a 5-year period, which wow. That might have helped Edmonton if you went back in time. All those number 1 picks didn't necessarily work out, but it's a pretty big change. I think I haven't had a time to sort of process it all, but the way my brain tells me that's going to work out is, first of all, if you finish dead last, you're falling no worse than 3rd overall instead of 4th overall, because there's only 2 lotteries now. So you can only have 2 teams come from behind to beat you. And the odds when you finish last will be better that you get the number 1 pick, because, teams that have had it in previous years won't be eligible. Teams can only come from 10 spots back. And so essentially these changes mean is that if you finish last overall, you're more likely to get the number 1 pick under the proposed changes than where we've been.
But what is it going to take for us to just get a set of rules for this and keep it?
It's not, we're going to have to get rid of the draft.
Okay.
That's what it's going to take, because otherwise I just think they're going to tinker with it, because every couple of years new things happen and then new GMs get mad about something and they react to it, or new owners, not just GMs. I think Detroit, it's no secret, was, they had a historically bad season last year. They're a team that's benefited probably the least of any team in the last generation from the draft. They were never picking high. And finally they have this one awful year, right? And did they drop to number 4, I think?
Yes.
So, I'm not saying it's just driven by Detroit, but you see that happen, and then the league's like, oh, that's probably not fair. And so they're just trying to readjust the weighting here a little bit so that a team in that circumstance benefits. But, I don't think this will ever, Steve, I really don't think this will stay 100% consistent for 10 years in a row at any point, unless we get rid of the draft altogether, and then we don't need a lottery.
Wow. And Chris, I do want to ask you about Hockey Canada, because they apparently are holding an orientation camp in September, and this was sort of slipped in under the radar in headlines on Saturday night. And I was like, what? So are they going to the Olympics?
I think it's a good sign about where their minds are at, that they're planning this. I mean, look, everything is subject to COVID, of course. Any plan anyone's making right now, like, I'm trying to think of my next trip, and I don't know when it's going to be, but sometimes my wife and I are dreaming up, hey, maybe we could go here in this time, but we'll see what happens in the universe. But yeah, I think it's a good sign that Hockey Canada is optimistic there's going to be a deal with the NHL, the IOC, the IIHF. So far that hasn't happened. But that deal would have to be relatively soon. If the NHL players, to flip it the other way, if the NHL players aren't going to the Olympics, the federations are going to need to know soon to make other plans, right? And so, Hockey Canada's operating under the assumption they'll be there. They've named their management staff. That management staff's been meeting actually or having calls virtually for several months and is actually narrowing down the list of players they're looking at. And part of that preparation is hopefully holding an orientation camp in Calgary in September. And, that excites me because I want to see this. We need more best on best. Like, seriously, enough. I'm getting old, man. See the gray in this beard? I'm only going to be able to see so much of this stuff while I'm still walking the earth. And so we've been denied too long. I want to see the generation of stars. And, look, the Olympics are a little problematic for a couple reasons. Beijing has raised some human rights issues. I don't know where COVID will be at. I mean, I don't even know. Is the Tokyo Olympics happening this summer?
Well, who knows?
They said they're doing it with no international fans. So it's still planning to go on.
Right. So selfishly, if there's a Beijing Olympics, Jesse, can I go? Can I cover it?
I don't think so, no.
If there's a Beijing, probably.
Next year. Oh, next year, I would think so.
Yeah.
I'm planning on being there. Like, that's where my brain's at. Like,
yeah.
This is going to happen, and CJ is going to be in the building. That's what I'm thinking.
I think that's going to happen, and we're all going to manifest it.
Okay, good. And right. I'll also be in Calgary watching these guys play ball hockey or whatever they have to do in orientation camp. Because if you remember before Sochi, there was an issue with how much it cost to insure all the contracts, so they couldn't actually go on the ice during that week.
Oh my God,
man! Team Canada looks like no.
Wow, that might be my next Juggernaut.
No! I love it.
No,
I love it. Do it, Chris. Do it.
No.
By the way, on that Juggernaut team, I can say it. You can't, because we know what happens when you say it. Who would be the starting goaltender for Canada if it happened today? Because that, to me, seems to be the position that is most up for grabs. Please don't say Carey Price.
I think Binnington. And look, it's not a slam dunk. Like, I'm not saying he has to be it, or, I'm not putting my career on that one, but I think he's actually played pretty well. He's got the Stanley Cup experience. Doug Armstrong has, comfort with him, knows him from St. Louis, and is putting together the Canadian team. Roberto Luongo's also got a say in this, of course. It might be Price, though, to be honest, as much as it might be.
It can't be. You can't take an 888 goaltender and go, yeah, he's going to be the Team Canada guy. Carey Price hasn't been good for a couple of years now. Can we fully admit that?
We can, but the myth of Carey Price lives on. Like the way players talk about him, the way GMs like he gets tremendous respect still. So I wouldn't rule him out. And then what are the other two choices? Mackenzie Blackwood or Carter Hart? Probably. Carter Hart's, had a bit of a step back lately. So I think it'll be some version of those three goalies. Like, to me, it's probably Price, Binnington, and one of Blackwood or Hart is my guess.
Wow. That's crazy. I don't love it. Gotta be honest.
Well, who else do you want? I mean, do you want Vasilevsky to play for Canada or what?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, is that an option?
You know what? Here's the thing. When Canada gets too into its own mythology about players, they end up like they did, and I think it was the 2006 Olympics. When Crosby, they're like, no, you're too young. Let's take the old guys. Busted. It was like you looked at the lineup, busted, no knee, no shoulder, no hip, and they stunk. And I worry that Canada's going to get into that because we got a little bit of this whole COVID thing, and we're not looking at things in its reality. We're looking at it in a COVID reality. And I feel like from a situational standpoint, I'm a little concerned about these guys looking at, well, what was this player pre-COVID? Well, who cares? It matters now. And I don't know that this management group's going to do that. And I think you have to look at how players performed in the bubble. And I think you have to look at how players performed this year. Otherwise, I think you're grabbing players from 2 years ago. And I don't think that that's a recipe for success.
It's all fair points. I think what's interesting here is that the management team has actually said out loud in the media, we're not basically beholden to anyone anymore because we didn't go in 2018. Like, I think they don't feel there has to be this sense of loyalty at any position, because look, Canada's men won in 2010 and 2014. And so just for argument's sake, if it was best on best and they won again in 2018, and let's say like Drew Doughty's on that defense again, just to pick a name, there might be a lot more push for them to be like, Drew Doughty's helped us win 3 straight Olympic gold medals. Like, it'd be hard to leave him off now. And he keeps talking about how he should be on the team.
But that's the job. That's the job.
Right. But I think
anymore.
But I'm excited, not excited. And it's nothing about Drew, to be clear. No. It's just, I like that they don't have those, they've said out loud, like there's like, they're ripping off all the, thanks for what you've done, but that's past tense. And I think they're really going to have a team with a lot of new blood and new energy. So maybe that is the one part that doesn't hold up when I'm saying Carey Price is going to have one of the 3 goaltending spots. Maybe he's included in that. I just, we don't have a lot of great goaltenders from Canada. Like like at that level, at the top of the world and at the position, it doesn't exist right now.
Mm-hmm. Is McDavid's line the first line, or is Crosby's line the first line?
McDavid's.
McDavid's? Okay.
Well, I have McDavid. I have McKinnon, McDavid, Marner as my top line.
Whoa.
Yes, that's how I had it too.
Wow. Wow. Oh, man.
Oh, that's...
No, I have no idea if they're going to do that, but I think that's a great top line. And then I think you come back with Marchand and Bergeron and Crosby. And then obviously that's not as offensively dangerous, but they'll just have the puck the whole time. Like, good luck playing with it. They'll cycle the hell out of you. And then I think your third line, like this is where when you're building these lists, I think there's more room for debate. Not to say there isn't debate. Some people might not have Marner, I guess, on the top line. That was my choice. But then, like, I think you got Braden Point in there. It depends what you like. Like Matthew Barzal, you got, if you want old guys, Scheifele, you got Stamkos. I think John Tavares will probably be a 4th liner on this team. Like, it will be a silly team, I think. Like especially at offense. I mean, the blue line is where it gets a little bit. There's way more room for debate because of what What's that?
Who do you like?
Well, I would go with Pietrangelo and Shea Theodore, pardon me, because they got the Vegas thing. I think you got to have Dougie Hamilton there.
Mm-hmm.
Cale Makar.
And then Shabbat and Riley, like, do they both go one or the other? I think Bo Byram might be in the mix. Honestly, I know he's only just played, whatever it is, 30 NHL games or less at this point. Like, that's where I mean. It's not – I just think that, I think Aaron Ekblad could be in the mix too. The question is, does Shea Weber get there? Like, I'm looking at the guys who've been there. Does Drew Doughty get there? Like, for me, they don't. But maybe, that it'll be interesting. Like, the blue line for Canada used to be almost a lock because every year if you look at 10 and 14, like, you had Doughty and Weber and all these guys were just the mainstays. Niedermayer prior to that. But now it's being turned over, and I think there's the most room for debate among that group.
Interesting.
I love that. I love that conversation. Just who should make the team?
I'll say it right now. If the Americans don't win gold medal, it's going to be a disappointment. That is going to. Oh yeah, the Americans are going to win.
Are you buying an American sweater or what?
I'm half American, so I can play both sides of the fence.
Adam.
But
what do they look like?
What do the American jerseys look like?
No, the team. What does the team look like?
What do you mean?
In your opinion?
Well,
starts with a J. For the love of God, say the word.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The Americans will be a juggernaut.
Yes! Yes, he said it. I love it. All right, this clip is going up on Chris's Twitter, and we're going to sell it on blockchain, right, Chris?
Well, I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion.
Yeah, we did it, Canada. Team USA will be a juggernaut.
Wow.
At the 2022 Olympics.
There you go.
I love it. Oh, that's
John
cool.
Gibson, Connor Hellebuck.
Oof, that's good.
Austin Matthews of your Toronto Maple Leafs, Adam Wilde, Steve Dangle.
God.
Not you, Jesse.
Johnny Goodrow, Patrick Kane.
That's good.
Oof.
The Kachuk brothers on the third line probably just annoying the hell out of everyone. That's a juggernaut.
Oh, violating every Olympic rule.
The USA
Juggernaut.
Great. They got to put USA and Russia in the same division just to see the U.S. I think
the groups are set. I don't have them in front of me, but the groups are actually set.
Oh, are they? Okay. All right. Olympics. Let's see if we can look about. Anyway,
we were all about
whatever. Doesn't matter. We can have this conversation 40 times before then. Chris Johnston, thank you so much for joining us today. We do appreciate that.
No problem. But you got the last plug. You got to get that tweet bought.
Okay.
Because where's the money going?
Well, it's going to Conquer COVID-19 charity. It's not going to my pocket. Don't worry. That's not the driving force here. But I'm fascinated by blockchain. And this is why I think it will be a collectible. Because if the internet is telling the truth, and this has been a hex that I put on the Leafs, the person that buys this will have on blockchain proof that they were the one who bought it and made me delete it from the universe. And so the only copy that will exist is the one that you own, that you buy for like as little as like $5. Like it doesn't, I'm not saying it's going to cost you $1,000. So
is it a bidding process?
I believe so. I don't know. I've never had someone buy my tweet. That's actually mostly why I want this to happen. I think this is the right tweet for it, and I don't know how it works exactly. I know it's for sale right now.
And
so
it's been minted, like it's been officiated as an entity on the blockchain.
Yes, and then I sign it digitally somehow. But I haven't done this process yet. So I mostly just want to see how this works. I also think it could be a collectible. It's one of one. I can't sell it again. So once it's sold, you own the only one. I'm going to delete the one that is on the Twitter app itself, so no one will ever see it again, except you will own the real thing, and you will be responsible for reversing this hex and allowing the Maple Leafs to have a great second half of the season.
Who touches the puck first, or the cup first? Is it Larry Tannenbaum? Is it John Tavares, or is it the person that bought your tweet on blockchain?
I think I could get the person that buys it on blockchain at least into the line, like probably with the scouts and stuff. But I'll get you in there somewhere. I mean, have you guys talked with this? Like, it must go Joe. If the Leafs ever won, it would go Tavares to Thornton, right? And then to Spezza, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe Spezza over Thornton only because Spezza's been there longer, but Thornton's been the better player.
No, it usually goes to the guy who's like most suffered. Like, it went to Ray Bourque second, like when Colorado won.
Right.
I think Jumbo, it would go Tavares to Thornton.
Wow.
Tavares, Thornton, then maybe should it be like Spezza, Simmons, then the Leafs crew, which should start with Riley because he's been there the longest.
Yeah, he would be ahead of those guys. I mean, there's a whole hockey reason to this. I mean, where does Taylor Hall fit in? That's the only thing I'm wondering. So
that's a good question.
Oh,
where
you heard it here first.
Hey, Chris, what about Eric Stahl? Where does he fit in?
Okay, you're getting a little greedy now.
Oh, I want Eric Stahl bad. I think he'd fit perfectly on the Leafs.
Adam, that's a weird way to pronounce Matthias Ekholm.
And Victor Arvidsson.
Yeah, what the hell? Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Too.
Why not?
Well, Chris, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see your face.
Yeah, great to see you guys. And I'm sorry to any Leafs fans out there. I swear to you, I'm not trying to put any, bad juju in the air. I just, just ease off my timeline. My dad might read that.
Never happens.
Some guy tweeted, Chris Johnston is not going to get into heaven, and I'm okay with that. Like, that's some guy wrote that.
That's a funny guy.
That's funny. Hey, Chris, thanks so much, man.
All right, guys. See ya.
Las Joyas se caen. In case you don't speak Spanish, that is Go Leafs Go in Spanish. And I just learned it on Babbel, the #1 language learning app. One of my goals for the new year was actually to learn a new language, and Babbel has made the whole process addictively fun and easy with bite-sized lessons that you'll actually use in the real world. So Babbel's got these 15-minute lessons plans that are, it's just so much easier than, remember sitting in high school and you'd have to conjugate verbs for an hour and you're like, God, I just want to eat lunch. I want to get out of here so bad. That's not what you're getting with Babbel. Babbel designs their courses with practical, real-world conversations in mind, things you get to use in everyday life, things that you can actually apply. Imagine right? You're going on vacation, hopefully sometime towards the end of this year or early next. Why not use Babbel and learn the language of the place that you're going to? And other language learning apps use AI for their lesson plans. Babbel doesn't. They actually used over 100 language experts. It is scientifically proven to be effective. And right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the promo code RUN. That's BABBEL.com, code RUN for an extra 3 months free. Babbel, language for life.
Get that tweet off the internet. Off. Gone.
Darryl Sutter hired mere moments after we finish up our show, saying that there's no way that Ward gets fired in Calgary. And of course he does. And of course, Darryl Sutter back for a second go round with the Flames.
Well,
this
Adam,
move to me smacks of desperation.
No, it doesn't. No, I'm here to raise hell. I'm here in Calgary, and it's just going to be hellfire and brimstone with the Calgary Flames.
Did you see any of the meetings or the press conferences that he had? Because he's clearly advanced in age, so he does the old man kind of Zoom call where he shoots
cameras
up
like
his
an
nose.
old man.
Yeah, the media people for Calgary need to just sit him in front of a laptop and a camera and show him how to use Zoom. Just look at the webcam.
At what point do we speak to our grandparents' generation, of which he is, and we say, listen, guys, you have been watching TV for your entire lives. Have you ever once seen a camera up like this, unless it was the Blair Witch Project? Like, at what point is this, something looks off about this? Could it be if I just went like this, I've solved the problem?
Adam, don't assume that they have TV all their lives. You don't know.
Well,
you don't know.
Maybe Darryl Sutter didn't. But so this is a desperate move, is it not? And Brad Treliving has got to be a desperate GM. He is bad at hiring coaches. Bill Peters, Jeff Ward took over, got the interim tag taken off, didn't go so well. And now we got Darryl Sutter, who seems like the Flames really want a law and order guy. Yeah. And also, who was the guy before Bill Peters? There was Glenn Galutson.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, my gosh. When you run that down, Treliving's terrible at this.
At what point, guys, does Brad Treliving, the Calgary Flames, go, maybe we need to hire a guy who connects with this generation?
He has to be the last
I'm not
one.
even sure Darryl Sutter can connect with Darryl Sutter's generation. And when he was a great coach, that worked. But the reason he hasn't coached since he coached in Calgary is because it doesn't work anymore.
All right.
I'll go to bat for Brad Treliving with the only argument that works here. Darryl Sutter is there exclusively as a locker room reset and motivator. Any of those this generation coaches, I don't think they make the same impact. Darryl is going to go in and he's going to be so old school that even if you go, yeah, whatever, old man, and you try to ignore him, you will not be able to. He's going to be nothing like any of these kids have ever really seen, save for Mark Giordano, who's up there. Who's been there. But I think we've talked about the Calgary Flames. They're not particularly special, but they're good enough, for God's sake. They should make the playoffs in this division, in my opinion.
They should be going to the second round.
Yeah. And I think Sutter could, if the motivation is there, get it out of them. I think this is great news. His hiring is great news for Milan Lucic. It's great news for Matthew Tkachuk. It's great news for Sam Bennett. And if it's great news for those three, I think it's great news for the rest of the team, because they are clearly not a team. They're not a team. They're a bunch of guys skating around and not having a good time at all. And the idea that we're sick of sticking up for Matthew Tkachuk, like, so odd. So you've never heard that coming out of Ottawa with Brady. You never heard it in Toronto.
There's nothing ever been on the
Naz.
line in Ottawa. Well, Brady's played there. There's nothing that's been on the line in Ottawa. So, like,
that's true. But you never heard it with Naz here. You never heard it with Naz here. You never heard it with Brad Marchand in Boston.
Never.
And he was super over the top. At worst, they're like, "Hey, Brad, That's the second time you've licked a guy now. Can you stop? And then he did. And went right back to good old run-of-the-mill cross checks to the back of the head. But you never once heard the Bruins are sick of Brad Marchand. You know what I mean? They just seem... Why? Like, so I guess you just don't like playing hockey then. You know what I mean? Like, Darryl
Sutter, always be fun.
I suppose not. You know, you don't need to like. You don't need to like your job
under Darryl Sutter.
It's not going to be. No, it's not. It's not about. They're already not having fun, so they might as well be strict about it, right? Oh, you guys don't like this. Here's some Darryl for you. Here's the guy. Your new head coach hasn't seen another human being who's not a family member for 9 months, at least. He's been on his farm with his old iPad that he doesn't really know how to work, and they had to delay the press conference because it wasn't charged, and all that, and now looks good on you. You could have had Jeff Ward, but you didn't feel like having Matthew Tkachuk as a teammate, so now here's some Darryl for you.
The scenario you're painting didn't actually happen. It's just
I think it might have. But would you believe it?
I would though. I would.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Here, am I on? Is it muted? Am I on mute? Am I like? It's like Bill Hader's old reporter character from SNL.
That's where he just falls asleep.
Yeah.
And he hits everybody with the mic.
Yeah. Why don't you ask them some questions? Why didn't your wife take your last name? Ever seen that sketch?
Yes, I have. Quickly, before we get to the press conference here, we got a couple minutes. Steve, your thoughts, not thoughts on, but I guess, do you have anything you'd like to say about Walter Gretzky?
I talk about this sometimes when someone passes. You know, you talk about mourning the loss of someone, and you talk about celebrating someone's life. Now, obviously, there's a time to mourn, and I mean, people are mourning Walter Gretzky. You know, you can't escape tragedy. But with Walter Gretzky, you are seeing a true celebration of life. People are celebrating his life. He was a wonderful man by all accounts. You never hear a negative Walter Gretzky story. When I was 12, I went to a Leafs game. It was the last Leafs game of the regular season of the year 2000 against Tampa. The Leafs won. Matt Sundin scored a goal. And at that game with my friend Adam, but it wasn't this Adam, it's another friend, Adam Rodrigues. We went to this game and saw Walter Gretzky. And we were like, oh, and we were just so intimidated. Like, that's Walter Gretzky. That's Wayne Gretzky's dad. But we can't go say hi to him. But what gave us the courage to say hi to him was everyone said hi to him. Everyone, all game long, was walking up to him. So we gathered up the nerve, didn't have anything for him to sign it with, and he just pulls out the Sharpie, just like Paul Hendrick said in his tweet, and we got the signature. There is a picture of me at the game holding it somewhere, and we're trying to find it. I think it's at Adam's house. Another time I saw him at Union Station, and it was one of those things where everyone was nervous. And then one person said hi to Walter, and he was mobbed, just mobbed by dozens and dozens of people. No security, didn't need it because he was Canada's dad. And if you ever did anything to him, someone would rough you up. He was just a good guy. Loved that story of someone driving up to his house, stealing the grass off his lawn, and years later he even remembered it. Just a good man, and the sort of person everyone should strive to be.
Yes, Walter Gretzky. Just want to say the one time I got to interview him on breakfast television. After the interview, we took a picture, and he invited me to his house. As he did with so many people. Yeah, everybody was allowed to kind of come in, and there was like a mausoleum to Wayne and the other Gretzky brothers too, who'd also made the NHL. And it was really cool. And one of the best stories I ever heard was the fact that people would just drive up and steal pieces of his lawn. Yep. And while they were doing that, he would just say, "Hey, instead of taking the grass, why don't you come in and hang out?" And he was just he was a neighborhood dad, a really good guy. Walter Gretzky, thank you so much for everything and for being the ultimate hockey dad. Now let's do the press conference.
All right, Adam. Steve?
Well, I just wanted to say one thing. That's that generation. So I met Bobby Baun. I interviewed him, and then he was doing a book signing, and I decided I don't feel like being professional anymore. I want to get a book signed by Bobby Baun. And the guy in front of me in line got the last book. And Mr. Baun recognized me, obviously, from the interview that we did like half an hour previous. And he's like, oh, well, just come to my house. And he invited me to his house in Ajax, and I'm driving, and I go, I wonder which house is, oh, it's the one with Bobby Baun washing his van in the driveway. And I just got to go in his house, just invites me in, signs the book,
awesome,
addresses it to my wife and I, and also of that generation, just the neatest, nicest handwriting, nicest signature. Like, autographs used to be works of art instead of scribbles. Bobby Baun's is immaculate. And so was Walter Gretzky's. He had a really nice one too. Sorry.
I got a DM on Instagram. I'm going to read it to you guys. This is for Adam's History Corner. It says, hey, my husband Alex doesn't use Instagram, but he asked me to reach out to you for a segment in AHC about the sinking of the Bismarck and its effect on World War II. He donates $300 a year to Sick Kids, so he asked me to reach out to you. Thanks and love the pod. I think asking your wife to DM a podcast to get your question asked is next level. And yes, we are going to answer this question. And Adam, take it over for Adam's History Corner.
First thing you need to do after you're done this show is look up "Sink the Bismarck" by a folk artist, country artist from the early 1960s in America named Johnny Horton. That's an early 60s American name right there. Johnny Horton. There's a song called "Sink the Bismarck," literally. So the Bismarck is named after the guy that unified Germany in the 1870s.
Bismarck.
It's named after the guy. He wrote "Just a Friend." Or just friend.
At the piano, and everybody's like, "Well, let's name a ship after
That's
him."
the song you're talking about, right?
That's right. That's right. No, so
it's actually about a boat sinking.
So the Bismarck was in its day a top of the line battle cruiser when battle cruisers were already on their way out. Like we still have battleships today. They're still enormous, but it's sort of like the best thing I could compare it to, because it was a World War II battleship, is thinking that Carey Price is still the best goalie in the world. It was once the most powerful thing and 100% was the most effective thing if you wanted to control and dominate the world. However, at that point, countries were spending outrageous amounts of money on technology that was frankly outdated and really vulnerable. You know, you invent the submarine, that's one thing. Then you invent radar and put it in a submarine, that's another thing. Oh, and now we got aircraft carriers. So we can have airplanes flying all over the place and bombing the hell out of these big battleships. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to spend, in Germany's case, leading into World War I, 40% of their national budget on it. 40% of their national budget to build a navy. So the Bismarck story is interesting because the thing in World War II that Germany's known for, outside of all the terrible shit, is, at least one of the things is the submarine warfare. But they did have a couple of big battle cruisers, and Hitler was apparently as obsessed as Kaiser Wilhelm was a war before with building up the British Navy building up the German Navy to compete with the British Navy. And the British Navy was not going to have that. They were going to build and build and build. And the reason that Hitler was so obsessed with it was that you had, at the end of World War I, everybody demobilized. But the major powers were very concerned about Germany saying, you know what, fuck it, we're going back to war. Because they knew in their countries, France, England especially, that the stress from the war had created some serious societal changes, and they were concerned about turning communist. What you had in Germany was like full-blown communist revolutions in the streets, 1919, 1920. And so if Germany turned around and said, we're going back to war, screw you guys. Britain and France had already demobilized. The Americans had sent their troops home. It could be 6 months before they were back to battle strength again. So what the British did was they strangled Germany, which they'd been doing all war. So Germany has already agreed to an armistice, and they're just working out the peace treaty in Paris. And Britain's saying, sorry, you can't import any food. And it's the winter time. And the previous winter, they'd called it the turnip winter, meaning they drank coffee eating bread. The only thing that they could make
turned up.
when it was turned up. Yeah, it's terrible. Ugly.
Got some Patron shots.
So Hitler remembered this.
I don't think that was in the book.
No, they didn't have Patron. They had turnips, man.
Oh,
but they did have some serious issues with food. So there was a lot of German resentment towards this because it took 6 months to work out that treaty. So the whole time the British are saying, no, sorry, you can't eat too bad. And so Adolf Hitler was bound to determine that was never going to happen again. But he starts the war in Poland in 1939. And the German naval commander is like, we're not going to be up to strength till 1946. So I don't know what you want me to do. So the Bismarck, though, surprises a lot of people. It is top of the line. It's incredible. It goes head to head with a ship called the Hood. The Hood is the top battle cruiser battleship for, and I'm not really great on classifications for that. There are people that are absolutely obsessed with battleships. I love them. I think they're cool, but I don't have that obsession or guns or, people are like, I love history. Do you know about this gun? I'm like, not really. It's more about, to me, it's more about the world events. That's what matters to me. So you've got these two major heavyweight fighters. Imagine Mike Tyson. Who's Mike Tyson's biggest? What was the
Sonny
biggest
Liston?
Mike Tyson's? No, in his career, who was that guy that sort of came out of nowhere?
No, think of Ali.
Mike Tyson? No,
Think of Ali.
Buster Douglas came out of nowhere.
So imagine it's the British or Mike Tyson, and Buster Douglas is this German thing. And the Bismarck sinks the Hood. And this is at a time in the war where things were going terrible for England. They were losing everything. France capitulates, and then they lose their top battleship. And this is a country, the whole song, rule Britannia, rule the waves. Their whole thing is our Navy is the strongest in the world. And that's the one thing you can't touch us on. And here come the Germans with like 3 battleships, and they sink your best one. So, of course, for a moral victory, the Allies, which is basically just England at this point, hunt down this Bismarck, take it down, sink it. And it's an enormous moral victory, and it accomplishes essentially nothing in the actual terms of war other than you take a big battleship out of the war. But it wasn't like some strategic victory. The Bismarck was the boogeyman. It was sort of the thing in everybody's minds that was freaking them out. And it gave the British a hell of a go and really brought morale down. But when they did finally sink it, brought morale up. And then you get the famous British sort of hilarious sense of humor about being bombed every night. And it sort of kind of propelled them to turn things around piece by piece. So that is what I know about the Bismarck. I'm sure there's more details, but I don't know them.
Adam, what was the boat we were talking about on the phone the other day? Because this is what Adam and I do.
Oh God.
Was it the Victory?
It was I think it was Victory, and it was Nelson's flagship, Admiral Nelson flagship. HMS Victory. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the reason that came up in our conversation is I tweeted this yesterday ahead of the royal interview that I'm actually doing a deep dive on my family history, and I've actually hired someone to help with the history. And we've actually unearthed quite a bit because I wrote about this in the book in one of the very few non-zoo chapters about it was at the beginning. So my great grandfather is adopted, and he's allegedly the bastard son of King Edward VII. And I believe it a lot more now than I did about a month ago. A lot more. I'll tweet something today because someone asked for it. But one thing we found in our research is he was actually on that ship at one point, Adam, a ship that you recognized.
He was a drummer on the HMS Victory for 3 days, and that's like a huge honor because it's still in commission because it was the winning ship that led the way in the Battle of Trafalgar, which is one of the most famous naval victories in history. Huge, huge, huge. So
Trafalgar,
it's cool.
Now a road in Oakville.
That's right.
Road.
That's
There
right.
you go.
And it's a regular traffic update on 680. They
That's
always
right.
talk about Trafalgar.
There's a lot of traffic on Trafalgar. It's a very
Always
busy
is.
street.
Next question, Jesse.
All right. Just 2 notes. Since the last podcast, Brent Seabrook retired. That's a thing that happened.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
Kind of knew that was coming.
I hate what injuries and time do to players. Like, okay, the contract sucked. Brent Seabrook was an unbelievable hockey player, unbelievable defenseman, unbelievable, untouchable resume, and just injury and time and a bad contract caught up with him. But for a time, the Blackhawks, outside of the two-headed monster up front, the underrated two-headed monster was the one on the back end. You're an every single season Stanley Cup contender when you have what is essentially Canada's first D pair as yours. It's
Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook.
Staggering. So good. Great player. Game 7 overtime winner under his resume, on top of 3 cups. He's unreal player.
And then I did have the international ice hockey groups for the men's. It'll be Canada, USA, Germany, China in Group A. So there you go.
I don't like Canada versus US. I don't think they match up very well. I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but I think America is going to be a very, very, very strong team.
Very unpopular opinion with our Canadian listeners. Canada better win the next couple Olympics, because I think as the more time passes, the harder it's going to get to win. I can see the States passing Canada at some point.
Yeah,
just because
enrollment's up huge in the States.
Yep. Enrollment is up, and we're outnumbered 10-1.
That's
it's
the
so
people
hard.
Thing is kind of insurmountable.
Also, it's outrageously expensive to play hockey.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've said for years, I'd really like to start a hockey brand where they could just be it's like your generic hockey brand. It's like, I'll call it Wild. And it's like, oh, it's sort of a boring stick, but it's a stick that's carbon fiber, and I bought it for 1/10 of the price. You know what I mean? We need to make that way more accessible for people. It's outrageous how much it costs. And the companies that are behind this, come on. There's a little bit of of hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Let's all raise these prices together. Is there not?
I don't know. I don't know. You're asking
$60 for a stick is the lowest stick you can get that's carbon fiber. Right?
Stick's not even the worst one. Like it shouldn't cost $1,000 for a new set of equipment. It's maybe less for kids. Even $500 is wild.
Yeah.
It's way too much, especially for what it is and what it's made of. It's ridiculous. And I honestly, I'm really surprised there actually hasn't been it's so noticeable in the last 20 years. I'm surprised there hasn't been an investigation. Seriously. How is that possible that hockey pants, which used to cost $30, haven't changed much? It's not like the technology is that much better. Like,
they're getting lighter.
It wasn't like I'm old enough to be wearing leather hockey pants. These are the same pants, same plastics, same fabrics. Maybe the health and safety is a little better than it was when I was a kid, but not that much. And you're telling me that those pants are now $150? Are you kidding?
It's not an accessible enough sport. And once you buy the equipment, then you have to skate.
Yeah.
Like I was saying this in a conversation I was having with someone else. I suck at basketball. I suck at soccer. But if a friend is like, hey, I want to play a game of pickup basketball and I want to play with my friend, or I want to play a game of pickup soccer, I can show up and be on the field or the court and run around. Like if you've never played hockey before and you want to go play with your friends who know how to play, you're not going to have nearly as much fun.
Yeah. That's the part that really gets me. Because the equipment, okay, it's terrible. But even if you justify it as a one-time $300, $500 expense, and then you get to the point where I can't just go and play with my friends, because it's not even you can exactly like you said, you can go stand on a court and still enjoy basketball. You still play with your friends just by standing there, and you'll get a couple of jump shots. You'll touch the ball and everything, but you can't just go stand on the ice and play hockey with people unless you have this years of training and practice and people showing you how to actually play and skate, and then the equipment on top of all of that. Just the barrier to entry is just so difficult.
So hockey's got a ton of equipment. and it's necessary, right? So that's why it's more expensive than other sports. Do either of you know what like a set of football equipment costs? American football, the helmet, the everything?
No, but they wear less equipment anyway.
I played as a kid, and mine were like rented from the team. So like I returned it at the end of the season. It was probably like a $50 rental or something. But I was like 13 at the time. So
that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah,
That
and
should
then
be
I
a
broke my
thing.
arm.
Is that a
and then I
thing?
never played again.
And that's a good idea. There's a business model for you. Honestly,
I mean, you got to wear stinky equipment, but whatever.
Whatever, you can get that stuff washed. I think it's at the end of the day. Do we want this to be our game or not?
There's sacrifices need to be made, changes need to be made, or the states and probably a few other countries are going to pass us real quick.
Yep, absolutely.
This question,
We're too small. It's not about passion. They have 10 times the pool.
Right.
Sorry.
This question comes from Justin Sainsbury on Twitter. He wants to know if we think Sheldon Keith could win the Jack Adams this year. Are the Leafs enough of the, hey, they're performing above expectations, this coach deserves it trophy?
No.
We got to see. They would have to be so far ahead of second place in the Canadian division for him to even be nominated.
But even then, if they did, Steve, that would take away from the credibility of the division, right? People would say, well, it's an easy division. Who cares?
Yeah. Like for as down on this team as some people were heading into the season, I don't think anyone had the Leafs finishing outside of their top four. You know what I mean? And the Jack Adams is either the most dominant team in the league, which, they could be in that conversation by the season's end, or more commonly, it's the, hey, we thought you would suck award, right? So a nomination, maybe. I don't see him winning it.
Yeah, no, don't think so. Don't know who would at this point though, but we don't need to speculate on that. Who cares? All right. There's nothing like mid-season Jack Adams award picks. Love that. Compelling.
Where's Jeremy Colleton in the conversation? He should be getting some love.
I just don't care. I think I'm trying to steer us away from this. Actually, it's weird.
Oh? Whoa. All right. This question comes from Luke Snape. Luke wants to know, what do you think of the Leafs penalty kill? Very aggressive and looks great most of the time, but in bottom half of league and seems to be scored on a lot. I think a lot of people were harping on the penalty kill after those couple Vancouver games because Vancouver scored pretty quickly, if I remember correctly.
Well, first of all, I don't answer questions from Slytherins. So
all right.
Oh,
is his name Snape? Ever. You said
that's his Twitter name. I don't know. I don't know what his real name is.
I was about to say, man, he must have gone through hell in school. Jeez. Yeah.
Focus on that, not the question.
You're right. It does seem to be a weak point, doesn't it? The penalty kill. Not totally in love with it. And I was thinking about this today because Kerfoot, people are talking about him like he's already an ex-Leaf, but if they're going to bring someone in, his salary, may have to go out the door. And I was like, oh, but he's on the penalty kill. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not even a good one.
Yeah, it's not the greatest thing in the world. So who cares if we move him from it?
This is the problem. And you want to improve your penalty kill because you can't just be like, well, in the playoffs, there's less. No, the special teams lost the Leafs 2 series against Boston, 2. I don't really know what the answer is. I think if Kerfoot's going to go out the door and you want to improve your penalty kill, you got to acquire a full-time third-line center. Love the
Eric
job.
Stahl.
Eric, well, I love the job Engvall has done recently, but you either got to get a guy who is going to play under him and can support him, or a guy who pushes him down. Engvall, and I said this last year during the bubble, as fourth line center was magnificent. I thought he was very, very good. That fourth line of Engvall, Spezza, Clifford was actually very, very good. And then all of a sudden you get Engvall, Spezza. It could be like Engvall, Spezza, Simmons or something on the fourth line. And all of a sudden, It's pretty good. It's pretty good
ridiculous,
depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty gosh darn good. So yeah, the penalty kill is a weak spot. A lot of turnover there, but
I think it needs time to gel. I do like the style they play. I just think once they tighten it up a little bit, it'll get better.
They're great in the neutral zone. But once the other team,
oh yeah, but that's the Leafs.
Yeah, it
once
is.
You get past their blue line, it's over.
Ooh, it's a problem, and they've 5-on-5. They're so much better at that. Yeah. But on the penalty kill, it's a matter of time before they get possession in your end.
It's true. Jesse, is that all?
Yeah, you guys want more? We got plenty.
No, I think we gotta wrap because I gotta pick my daughter
let's
up.
go. Oh, okay. Come on, yeah.
Last thing, shout out the Toronto Raptors on March 24th against the Denver Nuggets. They announced they will have an all-female broadcast. First time in NBA history. They announced that today for International Women's Day. It'll be Megan McPeak. I believe she's of NBA TV, and also Kia Nurse, who is of the Team Canada women's team. They'll be handling the play-by-play. And then Kayla Gray and Kate Burness will be doing sideline reporting. So yeah, shout out them. That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
Awesome. Okay. I think that's it for us today. Thank you so much for listening to the women in our lives and to the women in yours. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And I guess our next show's Thursday, guys. So we'll see you then.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Connection complete.